This Summer Hikaru Died, episode 2. So we have Yoshiko and the fake Hikaru. I'm just gonna call him Hikaru from now on. They're kind of like going to school, but Yoshiko kind of stops, and you start seeing a bunch of police just head on to in the opposite direction. And it's really interesting because he does stop, and Hikaru kind of points out that it's probably due to the mass aura lady, or Matsura, I believe her name was. And because he heard about her passing from like some talks earlier in the day or something like that. But instantly we get this POV of Yoshiki kind of just like looking at him, and kind of like it kind of makes me realize that Yoshiki is very skeptical about this Hikaru, and whether he has good intentions or whether or not he is trustworthy, because he is having a lot of suspicion that he had something to do with her passing, which he did, as we find out in the last episode. And even when they head to school, people are kind of like talking about it, like, yeah, have you heard about the lady? She just kind of like died all of a sudden. People say it was like suicide or something like that, and then of course we keep seeing the POV of Hikaru, which is just like each time they mention death, Joshiki cannot stop but look at this Hikaru, because he knows it's not Hikaru. He knows it's a different being, and he doesn't quite know what he's capable of, but he does know that this this Hikaru did threaten him to like end him if he ever spilled the beans that he wasn't Hikaru. And so this just suspicion just keeps growing and growing as the day progresses, and eventually like one of the eventually Jujiki kind of just avoids eye contact with them altogether, and one of the friends that is their classmates kind of like points out that ever since the bridge has been taken down, or the tunnel has been taken down, he's been having to go through the forest, which is initially where this Hikaru kind of originated from. It's the only place where he can get home, and he feels kind of scared because there's like this aura around it where it's like freaky, where he feels trapped and doesn't know if he should look up or not. So he's kind of weirded out by it, and he wants Yoshiki to help him get home today. And Yoshiki was kind of like, nah, I don't want to. But this Hikaru kind of said, oh, you know what, that sounds fun, let me go do it, because obviously this Hikaru has never actually experienced fear, and has never actually experienced anything frightening. He just knows about it because he's taken over Hikaru's body. But the actual human experience, he has yet to be able to replicate it himself. But instantly, like, the other classmates notice that that's not how Hikaru usually behaves. So now they start questioning, like, hey, what's up with you? You usually are scared of this type of thing. Why would you ask to volunteer to go do this stuff? And he basically said, oh no, I got over that like not too long ago, so I'll be fine this time around. And you can kind of see suspicion kind of keeps growing around this Hikaru, and it is so interesting seeing how easily people are swayed by him, and swayed by his fake smile or his actual smile. It feels kind of fake though to me. And so they start going to this forest. They kind of view it as like kind of like a test of courage type of thing. And while there, they cross it, and I love how there's this transition where it was just like they were there, and then they were past it, and it was like, oh, it was nothing. But on the way back, that's when things really got freaky. And Yoshiki started noticing like certain thing around the forest, and Hikaru also said, oh, you probably shouldn't look at that, don't mind it. And Yoshiki could not help himself, but he looked at it, and then it started going after him. It's like, told you not to look at him. He's like, you should only be looking at me. And boom, the Hikaru gets hit, and we learned that this Hikaru kind of ate whatever thing came after Yoshiki and absorbed it himself. Got a little nosebleed because it did put up a fight, but after that, Hikaru was kind of like, oh well, you know, you shouldn't really go looking at other things. You should only focus on me. And he came up with like he started thinking, oh, there's probably a way where I can just forcefully make him just think of me now. Meanwhile, the other girls were experiencing a similar thing where they got separated from the group, and they started feeling this also like ominous aura, and they booked it as fast as they could. And then of course, like when Hikaru got hit, that's when they heard a big loud noise, and they were kind of wondering what if that was what it was. But you can see there's like this suspicion that something funny is going on in this village, and especially something funny is going on around with Hikaru, which now that that part's done, we have to focus on the other guy that came in to kind of solve what's happening. There's this guy that comes from an agency that we met in the last episode, that he showed up with some relic that he found um, within Hikaru's bag that he lost when he went up in the mountain, which is supposed to ward off evil spirits. But because it no longer was there, like he kind of concluded that, oh, whatever was wandering around the mountain is now coming into town. So we have like kind of like a big dilemma going on. People are scared and people don't know what's happening, but they do know that something has been feeling off since the summer, but not nobody can quite put a pinpoint or on who or what is happening. But this guy obviously came in and said, listen, it wouldn't surprise me if like whatever was in the mountain found a way to hide among you guys. You guys have to be careful and mind that from now on. And Yoshiki was one of the ones that was like really, really felt like, man, this is so out of place. He definitely feels like something's wrong with his way of thinking. He definitely feels like Hikaru is not a safe space, but at the same time, because the Hikaru he knew passed on, he has nobody else to really rely on, nobody else he can really lean on to. So he keeps coping with Hikaru's death by allowing this creature to inhabit and be around his life. And we cut to a scene of Hikaru and Yoshiki kind of having like a moment where this Hikaru kind of told them, here, you can feel what's inside my stomach. And you saw like this big gash where Yoshiki kind of put his hand and kind of said it felt like chicken, raw chicken. And at one point he kept moving moving his hand up, and it was like it felt like such an intimate moment shared between the two, that Yoshiki just kind of went along with it. And then he got caught by something, and he freaked out, and Hikaru was like, yeah, I gotcha, making kind of like poking and teasing him for a bit. But then as it came undone, Yoshiki finally got to see Hikaru shirtless, and he kind of blushed a bit. So in that aspect, you can see that this Hikaru is really trying to force his way to inhabit Yoshiki's mind, and really making it seem like he wants to be a big part of him. And he really feels really possessive towards Yoshiki, obviously because he has memories of Hikaru, but also because this is his one-way ticket to having a full human experience. So there's no way that he wants to let in the other entities that are within the mountain to have him. And so he's gonna do whatever is necessary to keep Yoshiki by his side, and to keep him tied up to him. And then after that event happens, Yoshiki tries to purchase some stuff from the supermarket, and all he can really think about is Hikaru. And it feels like his world is like spinning out of control, like something's grabbing him, and he starts kind of zoning out the world. So we can still see that he's still suffering from losing Hikaru, and he really does not want to be there. Like everything else just felt flat. But as soon as this woman goes to him and starts talking about how he should avoid being with Hikaru because she's seen things, and she knows that whatever is in the mountain is now Hikaru. So she kind of tries to let him know, listen, you gotta avoid that thing at all cost. if you keep being around it, you'll no longer cease to be human, which Yoshiki kind of puts it in the back of his mind, because as soon as he gets home, he starts thinking about everything that's happened and how his suspicions are pretty much on point. He knows that Hikaru is the one that that killed the old lady, and he knows that he is not the real Hikaru, but at the same time, he just kind of like shuts everything out and then remembers the the event that just happened with the Seeker, where they shared the intimate moment, and then he just kind of replaced all his suspicion with him and having his own peace with what Hikaru is. So at the end of the day, he just did not care. He is staying on his delusion that this is Hikaru and that he can cope with Hikaru's passing as long as he's with this creature. So avoiding red flags is really a bad thing, but in this series, it seems like red flags are not are gonna keep going off until eventually Yoshiki finally has enough and or is fulfilled by this Hikaru, that he no longer feels a need to hold on to Hikaru and his memories. But this episode was fantastic. Better than the first episode. Uh, Rating it a 9 out of 10.